Hello everybody and welcome back to the Game of Muscle YouTube channel. In this video we're jumping in and checking out the 2016 BMW M6 GT3 car, which is the latest vehicle to be added to RaceRoom Racing experience. Now this car is BMW's effectively their replacement for the Z4 GT3 and is now their flagship vehicle for teams and people that basically just want to burn money by driving expensive race cars. To put the car through its paces, we've taken it to the Nordschleife, the Nordschleife. Hang on a second, guys.
Nordschleifes. Nordschleife.
The Nordschleife, according to Google Translate, that sounds like something that's under your bed at night. And of course, we are driving it in virtual reality. This time we're using the HTC VIVE, as RaceRoom is native to OpenVR. Though you can play it with the Oculus Rift as well, should you want to. And we've got both headsets. I've tried it out with both, and it works fantastically with both. So, for those of you that were thinking about getting this car, considering it, wanted to know if it's worthwhile getting, we'll cut to the chase. Yes, it is a really nice car. It's really polished, and basically pretty much falls in line with any car that Sector 3 have released in the latter half of last year and what's come out subsequently. Something happened. I don't know if it's a combination of their force feedback, their tyre model changes and their updates to the physics and just general polish of RaceRoom, but for the last 6 or so months every car that's come out has been really nice and ticks the boxes of what I consider makes a good simulator car, and this BMW M6 is no exception. It ticks those boxes, and we'll go through those tick boxes. The first one being it has really good force feedback to communicate things like understeer, the scrub of the front tyres. You get a nice shake through the force feedback once you start getting front end slip and the front is losing grip. You also get a feel for the load of the car on braking, so you can feel that front end grip as you're braking, which lets you know if you're going into a corner too fast, around a corner too fast, or just driving badly, which we are most of the time, let's face it. The force feedback also pretty much corrects, does counter steer for you. So the back end is very much correctable, mostly through the force feedback without you having to do that much yourself. If you've got a weaker powered force feedback wheel, I mean in this case we're using a TSPC Racer, but if you're using something like a G27 or I don't know, one of the other lower end wheels, you will probably still have to manually correct it, but the initial impulse of the force feedback should be there to guide you in how much you need to correct it, which is fundamental to driving in my opinion. And as I say, this car does that through the game's force feedback. Outside of that actual technical force feedback aspect, which is more inherent to the game rather than this specific car, but in terms of the car itself, it's a super planted car and a very obvious car to drive. Now, that really makes sense when you look at GT racing, because ultimately these cars in this race class is designed for incredibly wealthy people that might not necessarily be Formula 1 drivers or the very top echelons of racing. And let's face it, if you're making a car for someone that's got a lot of money, you don't want them to kill themselves before they spend more money on your car and take part in more races. So, you know, these vehicles are approachable whilst also being ludicrously fast. And despite at a core level being very controllable, very progressive and very obvious, you will find that it does have a quite a violent bite in it when you're coming to really push on the limit and you're really pushing the extents of the circuit, which just makes it really rewarding. You're not generally finding yourself crashing with this vehicle through something stupid like just going into a corner slightly too fast and then the tyres lose grip and you're off. You're going to crash with this car because you're really pushing and you're really hammering it, and I think that is the spirit of the GT3 class cars, is that as vehicles they do need to be really pushed to get the most out of them, but they have to be pushed with finesse and precision. Another thing that stands out with this M6 is that it's really balanced out the box, even with a default setup that it comes with. And when the back of the car does step out, it does so in a really controllable and really obvious way. So say you put on too much brake on the downhill corners on the Nordschleife, then the back will slide out slowly and you can just counter steer it or relax off the brake, and it just comes back to you as you'd expect. I think the only nasty surprise with this vehicle would be powering out of tighter corners, low and mid-speed corners, powering out of them. You do have to be aware that you don't completely bury the throttle as the back will slip out a little bit, but it's really, again, it's totally predictable, so it's there to play with more than it is something that you're scared is going to put the car in a wall, as you might find with some simulated cars in various simulators. Outside of its general balance, I would say something else that's really satisfying with this vehicle is when you're on the brake, on the limit with the braking on tighter corners, and you've got the car in a little bit of a slide with all four wheels sliding, navigating the car in that state to line it up for the exit of the corner is really, really satisfying and really tricky to actually do in a way that's useful, but it's something that's often lacking from simulators. I find in a lot of sims, you get the situation where you seem to be driving a very defined path, and you're not trying to ever crab walk the car in any way at all, even when it would seem to make sense to do so. It seems to be something you want to avoid in a lot of simulators, but with this car it just comes really naturally and is really satisfying. Now that we've said probably too many positive things about the vehicle, some negatives. I think the engine note, although sounds really nice, the actual tone of it is really good, and there's good depth to it. As you come off the throttle, you get a different note, and it also does that engine wobble note as you change gear, whereas I guess it's the mechanics of the vehicle sort of kicking in the inertia of the engine components. It has all that really nicely done. The problem with it is the volume of your car engine is really quiet relative to not only the opponent volume, which you can kind of fix by turning the opponent volume down. I turn it down to about 30%, but then that still seems to mismatch the audio of everything else, because then everyone else is super quiet as they drive away from you, and you can only still just hear your car. But also the engine volume seems quiet relative to the noise of the suspension and the track texture and bumps and tyre skids. So I think I mean, maybe the car, maybe in reality the car in the cockpit's actually not that noisy. You do get a lot of real-world cars, even race cars, where in the cockpit they might not necessarily be as noisy as you'd intuitively expect, be that because the car's well dampened in terms of noise, but also typically people will be wearing race helmets in these cars, so the actual engine note might not be that noisy relative to vibrations and all the other nonsense that's going on inside a cockpit. But regardless, I definitely think maybe it's a technical issue, but they could just raise the volume of the engine separate to the audio settings that you've got in the game. I think that would improve things greatly with this car and let you hear the engine whilst you're in amongst other vehicles, whilst also having those other vehicles be noisy. What other negatives are there? Come on, we've got to be more negative. We've been way too positive. Oh, okay. Here we go. Here's a negative. The interior of the car is really nicely modelled. It's exactly as I'd expect. It's got a nice roll cage there, so when you flip the car over, your head doesn't end up compressed into your lungs, which is always a positive when you're in a car accident. But obviously, because RaceRoom is DirectX 9, it doesn't have the specular or just the text, the way the textures are lit inside the cabin of the car, and the actual texture finish isn't quite as spectacular as you might find in some of the other simulators. So, you know, if you're licking the dashboard, which I know some people do, you might be a little bit disappointed by that aspect of the car. But having said that, the actual, and surprisingly so, the actual lighting that comes through in terms of how the colour of the lighting and the way the lighting plays with the shadows through the cabin of the vehicle, the cockpit. What do you call it? A cockpit with a car, but a cabin in a train. We'll just call it a cabin. Maybe you can use both words on a whim. But you can see here in the video the actual shadows moving around through the vehicle really add a sense of speed, and in virtual reality as well, it really plants you inside of the car, and it's really, really nicely done in RaceRoom. And especially noticeable when you set the lighting to morning or dusk. And of course in RaceRoom you can choose from morning, midday and evening. All times of the day when you should be drinking cups of tea, incidentally. But really, there's not that much more to be said about the car. I think outside of the car itself, which is really fantastic and well worth trying, and you can try it for free, so this video is basically pointless. You can just go and try it yourself if you sign up to RaceRoom. But outside of the car, a really nice thing with RaceRoom is the fact that you do have good class-based racing, and as a developer, Sector 3 have focused on licensing entire classes and as many as possible vehicles from those classes of racing. So in this case, I think there's 7 or so GT3 class cars that you can race against. And so when you're actually in a race with them, it really does feel like you're taking part in one of the FIA GT events. Say, I don't know, there's a Japanese Super Cup, there's ADAC GT Masters, the FIA GT World Cup, there's the 24-hour racing that they do with this class of car. So you know, it makes it more immersive and more like what you might have seen in real-world racing on the TV, or if you've ever been to a track in real life. So that's always nice, and a good advantage of RaceRoom with this particular car if you were to have this car in other simulators. So, well, there you go. I mean, that's it. This video's gone on far too long. If you've managed to get this far, you're either crazy or someone that's obsessed with driving simulators, in which case you are crazy by default. So, thank you for getting this far. We'll check this out on some other circuits. I'm going to jump in. We'll do some streaming with this car as well at some point. So if you want to keep up to date with us, if you've got any questions or you want to drive with us, don't forget to subscribe, click the like button. It's really cheesy how YouTubers have to say this at the end of the video. I mean, you say it because otherwise people don't do it, but then I feel sorry for those of you guys that actually watch every video. Those 3 of you that watch every video and think, oh God, it's the ending again. So, well, yeah, there you go. Sorry, guys, but subscribe, like, and leave a comment. As I say, link to the Twitch channel. You can't apologise for it and then do it. It's a total contradiction. I will see you in the next video we do. Fantastic job, Sector 3. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. Also, if you look to your right as you get to the end of this circuit, you'll see there's a Game of Muscle-shaped GT car hole in the arm co at the side of the circuit. Whoops. Goodbye.